All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having an incredible week. Just a quick show this morning since we're going live on YouTube tonight for Warriors-Lakers. Remember, final buzzer, Warriors-Lakers, live on YouTube tonight. But because of that, quickly this morning, we're just going to hit the next two teams in my contender rankings. If you guys remember, yesterday we did 10, 9, and 8. 10 was a little bit of cheating. We did Heat Warriors as like our establishment kind of situation there. And then at 9, we had the Minnesota Timberwolves, and at 8, we had the Milwaukee Bucks, hitting 7 and 6 today. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements as well as the film threads that I do from time to time. And then last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments. We're going to hit some mailbags later on in the week. All right, let's talk some basketball. So number 7, and again, I have to throw this obligatory note out there because this happens every single year. I've done this. This is my 3rd playoff run that I'm getting ready to cover with the volume, and my 4th since I've had a daily podcast. And this is the most common bit of pushback that I get. I don't react super strongly to regular season standings. I don't. I think that there are some specific trends that matter, especially as it pertains to the top teams in the league. Like, I'm a big believer that if you are a veteran team that has a top-tier superstar and you dominate the regular season, that is usually a very strong indicator of a team that has a real strong chance to win the title, which is, by the way, why Denver and Boston are going to be near the top on my list. Those two teams are obviously the top of my list. I'm never going to bump teams like that down for teams that had less impressive seasons in the standings. That said, pretty much everything beneath that tier, any team that doesn't check those 3 boxes, again, like veteran superstar, veteran, consistent veteran presences in the rotation, and dominates the regular season, outside of that specific archetype, everything else to me is kind of scrunched together, and I'm looking at your personnel, I'm looking at your strengths and weaknesses, I'm looking at how you would favor in specific matchups. And so, yes, number 7, I have a team that has dominated the regular season this year, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are 53-25, currently the 3 seed in the Western Conference, although only 1 game back of first and still within striking distance there. For the season, they are 4th in offense and 6th in defense. Their strengths, their starting lineup has just an enormous amount of offensive skill. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been one of the best primary initiators in the league this year. These are his numbers on synergy for play types, including passes in the 3 primary individual creation play types. Pick and roll, including passes, 1.15 points per possession. That's literally awesome. Isolation, 1.13 points per possession, including passes. That's literally awesome. 1.20 points per post-up, including passes. All 3 categories is in the 84th percentile or better for volume. So he's been one of the very best versatile shot creators in the league this year. Jalen Williams, one of my favorite young players in the league. He's also been a very good individual creator. He himself is at 1.10 points per pick and roll, including passes. He's also at 0.96 points per ISO, which is pretty solid. He's only posted up 4 times all season, although he's at a point per possession there as well. He's converting spot-up possessions as a second side guy at 1.21 points per possession, which is insane. And he's been the second best pull-up shooter in basketball this season, minimum 300 attempts. Although there's been some jockeying around. CJ McCollum has actually left everybody. He's now in first place. Jalen Williams is in second. James Harden is now in third place. He's also an incredible downhill athletic force, a guy that can bring some real matchup issues to the equation. Chet Holmgren is the ideal spacing big. He's shooting 41% on unguarded catch and shoot jumpers this year. Really unlocks a lot of the stuff in their 5-out offense. He's also been one of the best roll men in the league this year. There are 11 players that have logged at least 200 roll man possessions. Chet is converting those at 1.27 points per possession, which ranks 3rd on that list. Lou Dort shoots 45% on unguarded catch and shoot jumpers. Giddey is the one guy that kind of has some offensive weakness, especially off the ball in that group, but he's shooting a lot better than he used to. Since the All-Star break, he's shooting 40% on catch and shoot threes. 40%. That's really damn good. That's what's at 1.2 points per shot. That's a really good result for them. And then he's also a really good second side creator, especially when one of Shai or Jalen go to the bench. He's a 78th percentile pick and roll player, including passes. The Oklahoma City Thunder have the second best half court offense in basketball, according to Cleaning the Glass. The fourth most productive transition offense, which takes us to their defensive strength. This is an aggressive playmaking defense. They use their speed. They are in passing lanes. They are constantly forward aggressive to try to force turnovers and to get out in transition. They force 16 turnovers per game, which is the most in the NBA, a big feeder for that transition attack that we talked about. They are the only team in the NBA this year that scores at least 20 points per game off of turnover. So this is a very fast, very skilled offense, a playmaking defense that loves to get out in transition. I do not think they're going to have any issues scoring the basketball when they get into the postseason. Their weaknesses, though, all of that aggression in the passing lanes on defense gives quality three-point looks, especially to teams that can be calm with good ball handling and make quality reads to beat that aggression. They give up the 8th most threes in the league this year in terms of three-point attempts per game. They are also a truly bad defensive rebounding team. They have the second worst defensive rebounding percentage in the NBA. They allow an offensive rebound on more than 30% of their opponents' misses. And when they get into clutch situations, when the score's within 5 with with less than 5 minutes left, that number rises to almost 40% of opponents' misses that are getting turned into offensive rebounds. They are also really reliant on jump shooting. They are the 4th most frequent jump shooting team in the NBA in terms of how many jump shots they take per 100 possessions. They are super young and inexperienced. Every single one of the 8 players who have logged over 1,000 minutes for them this year is 25 or younger. 4 of those guys, including 3 starters, are 22 or younger. Now, what a lot of people are going to say is, what about the 2012 Thunder? And what they don't realize is the core was young there, but they had a lot of veteran role players in the rotation. They had 3 vets in their top 8, including Kendrick Perkins, Thabo Sefolosha, and Nick Collison. And then at the deadline, they added a 37-year-old Derek Fisher who played in every single playoff game for them. So they had young stars, but their role players were actually a pretty veteran group aside from like Serge Ibaka. So they're not really the same type of team that 2012 Thunder team was. Then we also have the reality of their size predicament. They have tons of length and quickness. That's actually a strength of their roster, in my opinion. They're the long arms everywhere, guys that can compete on the perimeter, tons and tons of foot speed. Lou Dort is actually, in my opinion, in that top tier of perimeter defenders in the NBA. He just has an incredibly low center of gravity, and he can beat people to spots and force them to shoot over the top. He's really good at disrupting the shooting pocket to force misses against pull-up shooters. I think that's going to be really valuable in the Western Conference playoff run when you have to go through guys like LeBron James, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant. You get the point. Just lots of forwards that you have to contend with out there. Lou Dort is a great option there. But outside of Lou Dort and Jalen Williams, Shai is kind of thin. Josh Giddey's kind of thin. Chet Holmgren is kind of thin. They do not have a power forward on the roster. They've confronted that issue by going with 2 big looks, including Jalen Williams off the bench next to Chet Holmgren, but those groups have not nearly scored the ball as well as their smaller lineups. And, a big thing here is we're just looking at NBA history. Those last 2 segments, specifically their lack of size and their lack of experience, the only team really that has won despite a lack of size in recent NBA history is the 2022 Warriors. And again, every time we run into that specific predicament, I always remind people, Steph Curry is the exception that makes the rule. He's the one guy who was so damn skilled that he could lift up a physically limited roster to the point where they were able to succeed the way that they did. And even then, that team was really long and athletic on the perimeter and had a ton of veteran presences in the lineup. So very, very different than this Oklahoma City Thunder team. NBA history tells us when you are young and when you are small, you're probably not going to win. That's what NBA history tells us. They are going to run consistently into matchups that look to attack their thinner wings, their thinner front line. I think that foul trouble is going to be a significant issue for them in that front court. It's one of the things I have for their specific playoff path. What does Oklahoma City need to do to make it all the way to the promised land? 1, Shai needs to play like a superstar in the playoffs. That's a big test. There are a lot of players who have dominated NBA regular seasons and have gotten to the postseason and it hasn't translated. There's a long list of players on that list. I expect Shai to succeed in that test. I think Shai's versatility in that he doesn't do the same thing every time. He's a lot more unpredictable. And the fact that he competes on the defensive end, I think those two things are going to maintain Shai's impact when he gets into the postseason. But he's a little heliocentric in the sense that he can attack from the same spots on the floor with the same type of dribble combinations time and time again. And I do think some perimeter defenders could figure some stuff out over the course of the series to better anticipate his changes of pace and direction and try to cut him off. That's just the challenge. By the way, I'm not saying this is not like Shai has a weakness. What I'm saying is every single playoff kind of test challenges every player's strengths and weaknesses. That's literally what the playoffs do. They are the grand revealer of what you are as a basketball player. We're going to find out what Shai's real strengths are and what his real weaknesses are. I'm excited. I think he's going to do well, but the Thunder will need him to do extremely well to have any chance to get through this. He's going to need to play like flat out a top tier superstar, meaning at the same level as Jokic or Giannis did in the 2021 and 2023 playoff runs. Same with Jalen Williams. Needs to be a legitimate backup star. They have to shoot the ball well. Like I talked about earlier, they're the fourth most frequent jump shooting team in the NBA, so very reliant on jump shot results, so they're going to have to shoot the ball well. Chet has to avoid foul trouble, which I think is going to be a big deal in some of their bigger matchups that they'll run into. They just have to find a way to hold up physically. Really exciting young team, a team that I'm a huge believer in the long term, but this is just a simple matter of NBA history. This, to me, is a young team that is dominating in the regular season at this phase. Now they have to go through the playoff lumps. That's the process. Dominate regular season, take playoff lumps, get over the top. That's how it works. There's never been a team that's been able to skip those steps. That's not how it works. There's never been a team that was able to go dominate the regular season as a young team, walk into the playoffs and kill everybody and win. That just doesn't happen. There's always lumps along the way. This is Oklahoma City's first attempt at that process. The NBA season is in full swing, and when I can't get enough of the action on the court, I spice things up betting on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers bet $5 and get $150 instantly in bonus bets. Right now, the championship favorite is the Boston Celtics at plus 190. You can also get the Lakers at plus 3,500. So if you're a believer in their late season run, that is a big number. North Carolina listeners, don't forget DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in your state. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. The crown is yours. All right, moving on to number 6 in my list of contenders for this playoff run, the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, looking at their season-wide numbers is super confusing because they've been 3 completely different teams this year. From training camp to when they hoisted the in-season tournament trophy, they were 14-9, which was the 8th best record in the league at the time, 15-9 if you include the in-season tournament win. But that was a defensive-minded team. They were 7th in defensive rating, 8th in defensive rebounding percentage, and 22nd in offense, right? Then we go into this terrible in-season tournament malaise. After they hoist the trophy, they play like shit for a month, right? They go 3-10, 24th in offense, 21st in defense, lost to a bunch of bad teams. It was ugly. But this January 7th run from there to this point, they're 28-15, 5th best record in the league over that span. But it's a fundamentally different type of success than what they had in the early season run. Remember, early season, good defensive rating, good defensive rebounding team, bad offense. Now, 4th in offense, 20th in defense, and 20th in defensive rebounding percentage. So could not be more different than what they were to start the season. They are outscoring teams, and they're not defending very well, and they are not rebounding very well. So even in the 2 separate stretches where they were a good team this year, They were good in very different ways. I am choosing to look at them as the later version, as the offensive-minded version that can't defend, rather than the defensive-minded version that couldn't score. Just because for one, it's a much larger sample size. It's more than half the season, and that more or less is the personnel direction that they've gone to, as Vanderbilt obviously has been hurt, and it's been a lot more Rui Hachimura, who's a better offensive player than he is a defensive player. So their strengths. They have one of the best two-way front courts you could ever hope to have in a playoff run. They are 26-14 in playoff games that both LeBron James and Anthony Davis were able to finish healthy. There were two games against the Phoenix Suns, specifically Game 4 and Game 5, where Anthony Davis was unable to finish the game because of his groin injury. But in the games where Anthony Davis and LeBron were both able to finish, 26-14, they're 6-1 in playoff series that LeBron James and Anthony Davis were both able to finish healthy. Yes, you heard that correctly. Denver's win against the Lakers last year was the very first time a team beat LeBron James and Anthony Davis in a playoff series, except for the one time that Anthony Davis got hurt. And when he got hurt, the Lakers were up 2-1 in the series. So they can scale up on both ends of the floor with their physicality, especially when things degenerate into a rock fight. That is a huge advantage for them. They will have consistent matchup advantages on the offensive end and should score the ball relatively easy in most matchups. They have an inside-out attack all year long. They've been a great paint offense. Third in points in the paint per 100 possessions for the season. Second in points in the paint per 100 possessions since January 7th. They are second in three-point percentage since January 7th. It's a very catch-and-shoot heavy attack. They only take 20 pull-up jumpers a game, which is the ninth fewest in the NBA. But they take a bunch of catch-and-shoot jump shots, and they have a 61% effective field goal percentage on catch-and-shoot jumpers since January 7th, which is the second best mark in the league. But they're not reliant on jump shooting. They are 28th in jump shot frequency. The only two teams that attempt fewer jump shots per possession than the Lakers are the Toronto Raptors and the Washington Wizards. So to put it simply, no team in this playoff run will rely on jump shot variance less than this Los Angeles Lakers team. But when they do shoot, they are one of the most efficient jump shooting teams. So that to me translates really well to them on the offensive end. To put it simply, I am a huge believer in their offense when we get to the postseason. But there's a weakness there. And the weakness is they have not defended or rebounded well over this run. They are giving up the fourth most three-point attempts since January 7th, the seventh most three-point makes since January 7th. They've been the seventh worst paint defense since January 7th. So they're not doing really anything well on defense right now. Their starting lineup is rebounding well, thankfully. So like that defensive rebounding percentage, it's mainly the non-starting lineups. The Rui, LeBron, Anthony Davis front court is rebounding well. Every other lineup is getting smashed on the glass, which points me to the simple solution for the Lakers. I say simple because it's easy to do, but it's difficult in execution. And that is they're going to have to scale up the minutes of their starters in high leverage situations. You're going to need AD, LeBron, Austin, D'Lo, potentially even Rui to get up into the mid-40s for minutes per game, which could lead to fatigue and could lead to some of those things suffering. Now, if you're a Lakers fan and you're looking for some sort of silver lining, here are a couple ones for you. With Anthony Davis on the floor since February 1st, which is a 28-game span, they have a 110.8 defensive rating, which is actually really good. It's been the non-AD minutes that have been crushed. So if you're looking for a way to talk yourself into a better Laker defense when you get to the postseason, it's, hey, for basically a third of the season, when Anthony Davis has been on the floor, we've been good defensively. We scale up AD's minutes, should be fine, right? But again, like I talked about earlier, as you scale minutes up, effort level tends to dip a little bit with it. Another small sample size silver lining in the Lakers' last 11 games, they are 6th in defensive rating and 7th in defensive rebounding. Some good teams in that stretch too. The 76ers, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Pacers, the Cavs, and the Timberwolves all in that span. But there have been 5 bad teams in that span as well, and it's just way too small of a sample size. So I don't see that as enough to convince me that the Lakers are going to be a good defense. I need to see something from them when we get into that first round to believe that that's something that they can do. So really, I think the Lakers are just going to have to scale up their starters' minutes and really lean into trying to outscore teams, and that's trouble. They do not have a quality perimeter defender in the starting group. Austin Reeves, kind of like Malik Beasley for the Bucks, has done an admirable job trying to compete defensively as best as he can, but both of those guys are just in a physical limitation in most matchups on the perimeter. And then lastly, this is one of the biggest like matchup specific weaknesses I'm concerned about for the Lakers. The Clippers, if you guys remember, the Clippers were the last team to like really confound the Laker offense. The Lakers have had games where they haven't scored as well since January 7th, but it's usually like they didn't shoot well or something along those lines, or LeBron had a bad night, something along those lines. The Clippers game in particular was a night where I saw the Laker offense literally stall out. And the reason why was the Clippers switch. And while Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell are really good offensive players, while Anthony Davis and Rui Hachimura are really good offensive players, the problem specifically is LeBron is really the only guy in that lineup that can consistently and effectively break down a switching defense. That's a concern. Anthony Davis, not a very good one-on-one player anymore. Austin Reeves, not like straight up against a good defender in one-on-one situations. That's not really his game. He's a ball screen player, right? He can make plays in one-on-one, but not at a super, super high level. D'Angelo Russell, same sort of thing. Rui Hachimura literally needs a mismatch. Now, that'll be something that they'll attempt to do in those matchups. They will attempt to get smaller players on Rui, get smaller players on AD, get smaller players on LeBron. But in practice, when they've run against a lot of switching this year, their offense has stalled out. If you guys remember in that Clippers game, the only reason they broke it open in the fourth quarter was LeBron started picking on Daniel Tice and was making his pull-up three-point shot, and then everything kind of fell apart from there for the Clippers. But that's why I think in terms of matchups, that's going to be something that I think the Lakers are going to run into some issues with. When they run into switching defenses, it just puts a lot of pressure on LeBron James to bully guys in the post, to pull centers out to the perimeter and beat them. And that's just a lot to ask. And so I think that even as good as their offense can be, I think that matchups are going to play a big role in their success when they get to the postseason. So again, like I view them as a classic strengths and weaknesses team. All these teams in this tier, by the way, and I had a lot of Minnesota fans complaining at me yesterday, like, how can you have Minnesota all the way down at 9? I want to be clear. 1, 2 is, you guys can guess who that's going to be, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 and 9 are all this close. You could easily talk me into Minnesota being better than the team I have in third. You can also talk me into the team that's in third being at 9. They're all this close. So if you're looking at this as like Jason thinks the Lakers are way better than the Timberwolves, that's not what I'm saying. I view the Lakers as a slightly bigger playoff threat than the Timberwolves because of some of my long-standing beliefs in the way that the NBA playoffs tend to play out. That's all this is. So we're splitting hairs in a lot of different ways. The Lakers' path. What do they need to do to win the title? First of all, LeBron James and Anthony Davis need to play like it's 2020 again. That means LeBron and AD consistently hitting jump shots over the top. LeBron's held up his end of the bargain for the most part there this season, but Anthony Davis has not shot the ball well for the most part this year. Specifically with LeBron, that's a big part of them beating switching defenses. He's going to have to hit shots over the top. Jared Vanderbilt, I think, has to come back to give them any sort of real chance against some of the better offensive teams in the West. Vanderbilt is the only guy on the Lakers roster that can credibly guard Luka Doncic. He's going to be the only guy on the Lakers roster that can credibly guard Jamal Murray. So, like, specifically Denver, I put Denver, Phoenix, Dallas, and the Clippers are the 4 teams where I think they're going to need Jared Vanderbilt defensively to have a real chance to beat those teams 4 times out of 7. So, obviously, Jared Vanderbilt coming back is going to be big. And then last, I think they're going to have to scale minutes up on a lot of their starters, which means they're going to have to hold up physically. And I mean that from the standpoint of health. I mean, like, LeBron and AD are just going to have to do a lot, and it's very possible that their bodies break down before they get to that point. But that's the path. Scaling up minutes, holding up physically, Jared Vanderbilt coming back, LeBron and AD's jump shots in particular being efficient when they get to the postseason, and LeBron just being able to help break down those switching defenses. So Lakers at 6, Oklahoma City Thunder at 7. We're going to hit the remainder 5 over the course of the rest of this week. That's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting the show. I will see you guys tonight after the final buzzer of Warriors-Lakers live on YouTube.